In honor of the 4th of July and Independence Day, we thought we would chirp about
being independent at any age. And this
is Chick to Chick. I think sometimes so much of who we are as adults can be traced back to our childhood. And when I think about that, I think about my own childhood. I grew up in a very traditional home. My father was the breadwinner, and my mother was home, taking care of the house, cleaning, cooking, doing the laundry, and all of those things. And my father also took care of all of the finances. He paid all the bills. He took care of all of that. And my mom was really sheltered from all of that.
Well, I don't know if you would say sheltered, but they had defined roles, if you think about it. So your dad's role was one and your mother's role was the other, but you bring up a point. More of your dad's roles were more of the things that if your mother doesn't know how to do them, she should really know how to do them, right?
Absolutely. I mean, she was dependent on him to take care of those things. Mm-hmm. He even did most of the driving. And although my mother had her driver's license, she didn't drive that much. And so when it was her time to drive somewhere, she had great fear. She was nervous behind the wheel. And so as a child, as I was watching all of this, I had decided I don't ever want to be dependent on another human being for anything, because he was dependent on her to take care of the household things, and she was dependent on him to take care of all of the finances.
Okay, so your story in your family is actually rather familiar. I mean, I know you come from an Italian family, and maybe culturally there are certain things, but I still feel like that happens with a lot of families. While my mom worked outside of the home, she still had so many things that my stepfather or my dad, when they had been married, took care of. So my question to you is, as you saw all of that going on, how did you want to change that? How did you want to do everything? Like, why would you want to be so independent to do everything? I mean, truthfully.
Absolutely. I think it took me to another extreme.
Right.
And I am fiercely independent to a fault now. Okay. Probably too much so that I refuse to even ask people for help when I might need help for things. But I think the message that we're trying to get through here is that whether you are 25, 55, or 85, you really need to learn to be independent, because things happen in life. For instance, when my father passed away, and he passed away 8 years ago, my mother was lost.
Well, of course
she was lost.
Of course she didn't know what to do with some major things, the finances, insurance. Heck, the driving probably came to a halt. Like, she probably was really a wreck.
She would not drive again. I mean, she had never paid a bill in her life. She had never written a check in her life. She wasn't familiar with any of the finances. And while you do have these traditional roles, it's not a good thing. You really should have some insight into what the other person does, because life happens and things happen, and your life can change in 30 seconds. And it's whether it's a death or a divorce, or maybe somebody's injured. There are so many things that can happen that while, you want to have a partnership, you really need to have insight into the finances.
It's a bit unrealistic, if you don't. So you talk about your mom, and when your father passed away, that she was left with, like, what do I do? So two things in my family were, my stepfather passed away, and my mom had to learn to do the heavy lifting of things. Like, she understood finances and some of the other things that came along with the roles that men would certainly take. But she had to learn how to fix things. Like, she put a battery in her car because she figured out how to Google it. Yeah. She did those types of things. Now, conversely, because we're just really talking about our moms, let's talk about on the dad side.
Absolutely.
On the male side, because my stepmother had to go away for a little while to be able to help with her sister. My father was like, can you remind me how to work the microwave to make this? How about the loads of laundry? Because it had all been done for him before. That was the role in their house.
Absolutely. And I know plenty of men who their wives have either passed away, or they've gotten divorced, or there's some other situation. I know a situation where a wife was deployed and the husband didn't know how to start the washing machine. The husband was clueless, like, oh my God, I've got to go to the grocery store. I don't know my way around the grocery store. The husband didn't, he's like, how do you clean the house? Like, what do you do?
There's a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff does crack me up.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yes.
the message here is really, really important that, of course you want to have, you help each other out. And although you might have defined roles, you need to have knowledge of what the other person is doing.
Right.
That's important. You need to have knowledge of what the other person is doing. From the female perspective, if you've like gone hands off with the finances, you have to even know.
You better know.
You better know. You better know about the accounts. You better know how to get into the accounts and the passwords and everything
All
else.
of it. So you have a son and I have daughters.
Oh.
Okay. So we're trying to teach our kids to be very independent. And it sounds a little different to some people when it talks about the difference between a son and a daughter. But you are probably teaching your son how to be more independent, but, in a different way. Like, take care of your house. I know you're working on it. But you're teaching him what might have been like women's work.
Sean, I'm looking at you right now.
Clean the house, not just your mother cleaning it when she's going to visit. But on my end, I want my daughters to understand finances. I want them to understand so many different things so that whether they have a partner or not, I want them to be fully aware of every single thing that goes into a relationship. And I'm assuming that's what you want with Sean, so that later in life, when they are, aging adults, they aren't lost.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because when he was little, I would take him to the grocery store, and I know most moms think that that's torture.
Yeah, that's time off. Your kid stays home. What are you doing? No, but it's teachable moments.
It is. I used it as a teachable moment. I know it is torture a lot of times, but I took him to the grocery store so he understood how to do his grocery shopping. I had him there when I was changing sheets on beds, so he understood you need to change the sheets on the bed.
Were you there when you did the 101 on how to clean the floors and the counters? I just want to know, or did he actually click out of that process?
Well, that selective hearing does click in because I taught him how to clean the house, and now he'll say to me, oh yeah, I was cleaning and I straightened things up, and I go, did you dust? And he'll go, what? What do you mean dust? So he got a lot of it. He didn't get all of it. As I like to say, we're all still a work in progress.
Yes, absolutely.
But again, the message is there's nothing wrong with having those traditional roles and those defined roles, but to be so dependent on someone else that you're clueless about things, whether you're male or female, it's not a good thing because life happens.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway from this armchair therapy that we're bringing you today, whether you liked it or not, is that even now, I sit back and I go, okay, what don't I know and what don't I understand? And so if my husband is taking care of the bulk of finances and things like that, well, I know now because I know where the folder is with all of the important things. I know more than I did before. So anybody listening to this now, I just think you should think to yourself, wait, what don't I know and what should I find out so that I never want to be in a situation where I've lost some of my independence because I'm now dependent on someone else of things I don't know.
And it's interesting too. I think my father may have realized what he was doing, that he cut my mother out of so many things, that he actually taught me and raised me completely differently.
Right.
Like I joke all the time that he raised me like a dude. Like he showed me how to change the oil in the car.
My dad did too.
He showed me how to change the oil in the lawnmower. He taught me how to cut the grass. He taught me how to do drywall.
I didn't get that lesson.
Yeah, and so I think it's kind of interesting the way their roles were defined, but then when it came to raising me, he was teaching me things that boys should know, and I'm actually grateful now because when stuff happens now, I work it out. I fix it, and I know how to do it. So it's kind of interesting how he took a different approach with me.
Yeah, and I got that from my family too, and I certainly, like I said before, try to impart it, to my kids. But we hope that whatever we brought to you today kind of resonated a little bit, because we always feel like if we're chirping about it, then you might be chirping about it at home. So hopefully we brought them some good advice.
And again, whether you're 25, 55, or 84 now, like my mother, you can be independent at any age. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching and listening. And we will be back next week to chirp about another topic.